Welcome back, everyone, to the TheEMTSpot's Blood Pressure Podcast. Samuel Harrison here, and with me, as always, is the incredible Olivia Harper.
It's great to be back.
Always a pleasure. So today we're diving deep, literally, diving deep into some source material, into a question we get asked a lot. Can you use a blood pressure monitor if you have AFib?
Yeah, it comes up all the time.
And for good reason. Because monitoring your blood pressure is important for everyone, but especially if you're dealing with atrial fibrillation.
Absolutely.
So we found this article from the TheEMTSpot called, Can I Use a Blood Pressure Monitor If I Have Atrial Fibrillation? Catchy title, right?
Straight to the point.
So we thought, let's break this down, see what the experts have to say, and help our listeners navigate this whole AFib and blood pressure monitoring situation.
Sounds like a plan.
So first things first, let's make sure everyone's on the same page about what AFib actually is. Olivia, can you give us a quick rundown?
You got it. So AFib, or atrial fibrillation, basically means your heart's rhythm is out of whack. Instead of that nice steady beat, it's kind of like a fluttering or a quivering.
So not just beating fast, but like irregular.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that irregular rhythm means the heart's not pumping blood as efficiently as it should be. And that can lead to all sorts of problems, including an increased risk of stroke and heart failure.
So it's serious stuff, and it affects a lot of people, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about roughly 20% of the world's population.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
So getting back to blood pressure monitors, the big question is, can you use a regular blood pressure monitor if you have AFib?
Right, like will those irregular heartbeats mess with the readings?
That's exactly the concern. And the answer is, it depends. Those traditional arm cuff monitors that most people are used to, they work best with a nice, steady heartbeat. But AFib can throw them off.
Makes sense. So not that blood pressure monitoring is off the table for AFib, but we might need to, I don't know, get a little more specific with our tools.
Precisely. And that's where things get interesting. We have to start thinking about alternative types of monitors, like wrist or finger monitors. They tend to be a lot more accurate for people with AFib because they're measuring the pressure in smaller arteries that are less affected by those irregular heart rhythms.
So it's kind of like choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly.
But here's another question. Let's say you've got the right monitor, one that's specifically designed for AFib. Are there any special tips or tricks to make sure you're getting the most accurate readings possible?
Absolutely. There are definitely things you can do to optimize your blood pressure monitoring routine, especially if you have AFib. First off, make sure you're using a monitor with a large enough cuff. It should fit snugly but not too tight. And when you're taking your reading, avoid doing it during or right after an AFib episode. Wait for your heart to calm down a bit first.
Makes sense. So no checking your blood pressure in the middle of a heart fluttering moment.
Exactly. And another important thing, avoid caffeine, tobacco, and alcohol for at least 30 minutes before taking your blood pressure. They can all temporarily raise your blood pressure and give you a misleading reading.
So no coffee before your blood pressure checkup. Got it.
Yep. And try to take your readings at the same time each day, ideally in the morning before you've had any food or drinks. This helps establish a consistent baseline and makes it easier to spot any trends or changes over time.
So consistency is key.
Absolutely. It's all about creating a routine for your heart.
A routine for your ticker. Okay, I love that.
And one more thing, don't underestimate the power of record keeping. Keep a logbook to track your blood pressure readings over time. This will help you and your doctor see any patterns or potential red flags.
So we're talking about writing it down.
Exactly. Whether it's a physical notebook or a digital app, just make sure you're recording your readings regularly. It can be incredibly helpful in managing your AFib and overall heart health.
It's like giving your doctor a detailed map of your blood pressure journey.
Exactly. They can use that information to make adjustments to your treatment plan if needed.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Absolutely. It's a partnership between you, your healthcare provider, and those blood pressure readings. Speaking of which, there are so many different blood pressure monitors on the market these days. It can be a bit overwhelming.
It's true. Where do you even begin?
Right. So are there any specific monitors that you'd recommend for people with AFib? Maybe some that have really impressed you with their accuracy and ease of use?
Oh, definitely. There are a few that come to mind.
Okay, well, let's hear it. What are your top picks?
All right, so one that I really like is the Oxalign Pressure X Pro. It's a bit on the techie side, but in a good way. It's got Bluetooth connectivity, so you can sync it with your smartphone and track your readings in an app. And it can even store readings for multiple users.
So it's perfect for families?
Exactly. And if you're looking for something a little more compact and portable, the CheckMe BP2 is a great option. It's super easy to use with a one-touch operation, and it can store a good number of readings so you can track your progress over time.
Compact and convenient. Love it. What else you got?
Okay, and then there's a cardio arm. This one's got style points. It's sleek and modern looking, and it's also FDA cleared and recognized by the American Heart Association. So you know it's got the accuracy and reliability you need.
So we've got a high-tech option, a portable option, and a stylish option.
Something for everyone.
I like it. But before we get too caught up in the specifics of each monitor, let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture. What does all of this mean for someone living with AFib? Why is blood pressure monitoring so crucial?
That's a great question.
Well, it all comes down to the fact that AFib is a serious condition that needs to be managed proactively. You're not just passively waiting to see what happens. You're taking an active role in protecting your heart.
It's about being proactive and taking control of your health.
Exactly. And blood pressure monitoring is an incredibly valuable tool in that process.
It's like having a roadmap for your heart health. You
Yeah.
can see where you are, where you need to go, and how to get there safely.
Love that analogy. It helps you stay on course and avoid those potential storms on the horizon. And when we're talking about storms, we're talking about those serious complications like stroke and heart failure that can arise if AFib isn't managed properly.
Right, because by keeping track of your blood pressure and working closely with your doctor, you can significantly reduce your risk of those complications.
Absolutely. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge and taking those proactive steps towards better heart health. Now, I know we've thrown a lot of information at our listeners today, so let's make sure they're walking away with those key takeaways crystal clear in their minds.
Absolutely.
So just to recap, using a blood pressure monitor can definitely be a safe and effective way for people with AFib to stay on top of their heart health.
But it's all about choosing the right type of monitor.
Right. Exactly. Like we were talking about, those traditional arm cuffs might not always be the best option.
Yeah, they can get a little confused by those irregular heartbeats. It's like trying to measure a wave in the middle of a storm.
Perfect analogy. But once you found a monitor that works for you, it's important to use it correctly.
Right, like sticking to a consistent routine.
Exactly. Take your readings at the same time each day. Avoid those stimulants like caffeine and nicotine beforehand, and keep a logbook to track your progress. All those little things can make a big difference.
And of course, share those readings with your healthcare provider.
Absolutely. They're your partner in this whole heart health journey. They need that information to make informed decisions about your treatment plan.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, AFib is a serious condition, but it doesn't have to control your life. You have the power to take proactive steps to protect your heart.
It's like being the captain of your own heart health ship.
Love that, Samuel. You gotta be vigilant, keep a close eye on the instruments, and make course corrections when needed.
And regular blood pressure monitoring is a key part of that navigational system.
Exactly. It helps you and your healthcare team spot those potential storms on the horizon. And by staying on top of things, you can dramatically reduce your risk of those serious complications we talked about earlier.
Right, like stroke and heart failure.
Exactly. Now, I know we've talked a lot about the specifics of blood pressure monitors, but let's step back for a second and think about what's really important here. What are some key factors people should consider when choosing a monitor, especially if they have AFib?
That's a great question. And I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right. Everyone's different.
Exactly. What works for one person might not work for another. We all have our own preferences and needs.
Absolutely. Some people might prioritize ease of use. They want something simple and straightforward without a lot of bells and whistles.
Totally. I'm not the most tech-savvy person myself.
And that's perfectly fine. There are plenty of monitors out there that are designed to be super user-friendly. But for others, those high-tech features might be a big draw. They love seeing all the data and analyzing their progress.
The data nerds.
Exactly. And for some, portability might be a top priority. They need a monitor that's compact and easy to take with them on the go.
So it's about finding that balance between functionality, convenience, and personal preference.
Exactly. Just like choosing a car or a house
Or a pair of shoes.
Yes. You want something that fits your needs and makes you feel good. And don't be afraid to do your research. Read reviews, compare features, talk to your doctor. They can give you personalized recommendations based on your individual situation.
Great advice. After all, we're talking about an investment in your health.
Absolutely. And when it comes to your heart health, making an informed decision is crucial.
Well said, Olivia. I think we've covered a lot of valuable information today. Hopefully our listeners are feeling more empowered to take control of their blood pressure and manage their AFib effectively.
I hope so too, Samuel. Remember, knowledge is power, and understanding how to use a blood pressure monitor correctly is a powerful tool in your heart health arsenal.
Absolutely. But there's one more thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up. We've talked a lot about the technical side of things, but there's also a human element to all of this.
You're right. It's not just about the numbers, it's about how we feel about taking care of ourselves.
Exactly. It's about creating a positive and empowering experience around managing our health, especially when we're dealing with a chronic condition like AFib.
Absolutely. And I think that leads us perfectly into our final thought for today. How can we make blood pressure monitoring a more positive and engaging experience for people with AFib? What kind of support, resources, or innovations would make this essential task feel less like a chore and more like a proactive step towards better health?
That's a great question. It really challenges us to think outside the box and put ourselves in the shoes of someone living with AFib.
Exactly. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
It really gets you thinking, right? Like, how can we make this whole blood pressure monitoring thing less of a burden and more of a, I don't know, a positive experience?
Exactly. Especially when you're dealing with a chronic condition like AFib, anything that can simplify things and make you feel more in control is a huge plus.
Totally. I was just thinking, like, what if there were these gamified apps that made tracking your blood pressure fun?
Oh, I love that. Like you could earn points or badges for hitting your targets.
Exactly. Or maybe even compete with friends or family members. A little friendly competition never hurt anyone.
Right. It could turn something that feels like a chore into something you actually look forward to.
And speaking of support, I think online communities could play a big role too. Like, imagine a space where people with AFib can connect with each other, share tips, and just, feel less alone.
Absolutely. That sense of community and shared experience can be so powerful, especially when you're navigating a health challenge.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I get it. I've been there.
Exactly. And sometimes it's the little things that make a big difference, like a quick phone call from your doctor to check in, a reminder from a loved one to take your meds, or even a silly sticker chart to track your progress. Whatever works.
It's all about finding those little things that keep you motivated and on track.
Absolutely. And I think we're starting to see more and more of that in healthcare these days that focus on the whole person, not just the condition.
Yeah, it's not just about treating the disease. It's about treating the person.
Exactly.
Right.
Recognizing that everyone has unique needs and preferences.
And that mental well-being is just as important as physical health. You can't have one without the other.
Couldn't agree more, Samuel. Well, it looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you today and exploring this important topic.
The pleasure's all mine, Olivia. Always a great time learning from you.
And to all of our wonderful listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. There are resources available, communities to support you, and experts to guide you every step of the way. Don't hesitate to reach out for help when you need it.
And never underestimate the power of small steps. Every little change you make can have a big impact on your overall health and well-being.
So true.
All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's episode. I'm Samuel Harrison.
And I'm Olivia Harper.
And this has been the TheEMTSpot's Blood Pressure Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with anyone who might find it helpful. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay heart healthy.